Resident Evil 4 got released this past week. We already talked about the demo before, but this is way different. We actually get to play the entire game, the full experience. And I'm just going to throw it out there for whoever wants to kick this off. I'll just start off by saying this game is amazing and it's deserving of all the accolades that it's getting. I already knew that it was going to be great, even if all it was a better looking version carbon copy. I knew I would love it, but it is thankfully not just that. They added a bunch of stuff, including how you play. But I think it's phenomenal. But I'll throw it out to anyone else who's been digging into it. What do you think?
It's okay.
I say, Kyle, kick it off. You're the furthest in. Kick it off.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying y'all. Everyone, Jeff, did you ever play the original Resident Evil 4?
I played 0 of the Resident Evil.
0 of the Okay,
original, whatever.
I thought you said I played Resident Evil 0. I was like, oh, cool, you played that one?
Yeah, whatever.
That's great. That's great. They didn't remake that.
I'm in chapter 6 right now. Kyle, what are you in? Is it 7?
7. Yeah, I'm right ahead of you at the castle.
I didn't start playing any of them until what's it called came out. 7? Biohazard. Yes.
Yeah.
Biohazard.
Yeah, it's a good one to start with. It really is. Yeah. This one is great. I mean, all of us have played 4. I think we all really like that game. I think we all probably agree that it deserves all the hubbub that has gotten over the years. I mean, I think we're still using the third person angle that this game created, so it's like, I guess it did something right. So I really enjoy this game. I've played that first, let's say, third or fourth of it like maybe 20 times, because I just really like all the village portion of it or whatever. I've gotten to the castle and beyond maybe 2 or 3 times, so it's like I was really familiar with those first 6 chapters. So there are a lot of changes, you know what I mean? They're pretty superficial for the most part, and there's one kind of elongated section that they've added that like kind of has a boat, and you've seen it in trailers and stuff like that. But outside of that, like, everything just looks better. They may have remixed some things. They may have changed where an enemy comes out of. They may have added an enemy, here and there that weren't there before. It's just they did enough, just like Resident Evil 2, where someone like me, who again has played that first section so many times, was on my toes. You know what I mean? Like it's one of the least scary Resident Evils, but it definitely delivers in the suspense and the thrill of like combat and stuff like that. Because man, they throw a lot of people at you. I feel like they're throwing more people at you in this version than previous versions. Like, maybe because they can handle it, right? I guess
that's what makes it more scary in a different way, right? This game is like the most overwhelming,
it's not terrifying, but it's intense, right?
Yeah. I think I heard them say because you can move now, whereas the original you couldn't move while you're aiming. Because you can move now, they made more enemies, but they made them more aggressive too, which is I have noticed that.
They are very aggressive.
Don't forget, there's still that bonus when you shoot the lake a couple times. It's a bonus that you unlock, so make sure you do that if you haven't done that before.
I'm not doing that. I know what the bonus
is. Just do it.
I'm not doing it.
It's a free unlock.
It's a free death. That's what that is.
Yeah, well, that's you unlocking death.
Dan, how far did you get into this? And
I think I'm right where you are. So I'm like right after that whole scene where you're in the building and they're all coming at you from the bottom floor and the top floor.
Like Call of Duty zombie mode, basically.
Yeah,
Luis, and what do they call her? Baby Eagle? Is that what they call her?
Yeah, baby.
Okay, yeah, that part's a little bit overwhelming too, right? Where like none of the enemies specifically are difficult, but it's like they're all around you, and it gets like you have to survive for a while. And it fruit comes in. It's like, geez,
it just keeps on upgrading too. It's like now they're coming in upstairs, and now there's like ladders,
and you have to remember to kick that stuff over, right, or block the window.
To kick it or block the window, you have to get like it's really cool because you can put up defenses and stuff like that. It's probably I was saying hey, I'm at the lake part. It's one of my favorite parts of the game. That literally is my favorite part of the game. Is this one part like where you're surviving in the house?
I thought I was doing great in this game until I got there. I did die. I was like, oh, there's my first.
Yeah,
death. There we go.
Yeah,
all right.
I don't deny it. That's a really tough part, and you really expend all your resources. So whatever you walk in with, you're not walking out with. Sadly, it's a resource punch. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think the graphics are out of this world. I think I'm really glad they kept in all like the goofy stuff. So
Yeah.
Like Leon, like in the city, when everyone walks off, he's like, "Where are they all going? Bingo?" You know, I just
What is it? What is it? Bingo night?
Yeah, it's so cheesy. B
Yeah,
movie.
a lot
Like
of his
I'm glad they kept
one-liners,
that
like
stuff
after he beats them and stuff. Like sometimes he'll drop a one-liner that I'm like, oh, that is so good.
But like,
yeah, exactly. But you say "ugh" first, you know, like "ugh."
But it's not as cheesy as the original one. This one's still like
they've cut some cheese, but
it's like
it's
still homage of the cheese there.
I
but
agree.
yeah, it's the original one was like super. It was like wow, like this is like one of the best. Like people really love this game, and like it's very important. Again, like you said, with like the third person perspective. But like man, there's some cheesy shit in that original like game.
There is. That's true.
We were still in early Resident Evil years where it's like they didn't really understand how to write yet, or maybe even still, I don't know. But
it doesn't feel as like as serious as 7 and 8 felt more serious to me in terms of like this is real and this is scary.
Well, it still doesn't what's his face is not cracking wise all game, Ethan or whatever.
Right. But it's still, I still think it leans more towards the serious than like Dan was saying than the original did. It's a little more like, hey, this is really happening.
They've definitely made it a darker tone. It's more mature, but it still has that feeling that you had when you played the original. They're not changing everything.
Right.
I think if they could, because of how they make 7 and 8, they would, but I know they were like, we can't do that. We can't change what this game was. We just want to make it better.
So Derek, you mentioned being able to move while aiming and stuff. What do you think about the way combat feels, especially like the new melee stuff too? What do you think about
Well, that was actually what I was going to comment on. I actually love like how powerful Leon is. So I think that's another reason why they would have more enemies, is because you basically shoot them once and you can stun them, and then if you're quick enough, you can run up to them and then roundhouse kick like a whole group of them. So that's why I like doing it.
If they're bunched together, you can roundhouse
if there's like 3 of them coming at me, I'll usually stun one so that melee like roundhouse basically option appears. I'll run up and then I'll roundhouse all 3 of them. And usually the one I stun dies, and then the other ones like fall, and then it gives you time to shoot them while they're down or whatever. I personally, I thought Resident Evil 4, even the original, again, I played it and beat it for the first time probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. Yeah. I mean, I played the original. I just never beat it. I never.
Oh, gotcha.
I've said this in like our Fathers of a Grind show that all the original Resident Evil games, I played them at launch, but I played them with like my brother and my family. So they actually played the games. I just helped solve the puzzles because I sucked at the game. Once the games like got where the controls were improved, now I've played and beat every single Resident Evil game. So I went back. I think 4 was the last one I hadn't beaten, in course until like 8 came out or whatever. But I think that was the last one I hadn't beat. So I actually went back and played it like 3 or 4 years ago. And even when I played it 3 or 4 years ago, there's some jank to it and all that stuff, but it was still a fun, good game to play.
It's a pretty good game, yeah.
But they have definitely improved it. They've modernized it. I think if they would have been like, well, we're going to keep it to the original and you stand still while you shoot and aim, I think we would be bitching. So I think it was the right call to allow us to move. And again, because you're able to move, I do think they had to adjust the AI of the enemies to make it more balanced. So I've enjoyed I'm only in chapter 2. I haven't played a lot. I think I'm a little over an hour in. I've enjoyed my hour. I expect that. My only gripe with this game when I originally played it was the back end of the game. So if the reviewers are not lying to me and they've fixed the back end of the game as far as the pacing and stuff, I fully expect to absolutely love this entire experience. So I think it's good so far. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is I think this Resident Evil engine might be one of the best engines ever. I feel like even though the games when I'm playing them, and this one specifically really looks like this. I don't know if you guys experience this or maybe I'm just weird, but when I play in this engine, everything almost feels 3D. Like there's so much depth to the graphics. Like if you look at the ground, you can feel the depth of.
Yeah.
Exactly. Gorgeous. It's very detailed. There's a lot of depth to everything, and I'm like, and I noticed this in Resident Evil 7 and in Village, and I'm really noticing it in 4. I'm like, man, there's just something about this where it just feels like things pop out.
Well, it accentuates the gore and stuff like that too. Yeah.
Oh, it's very 3D-ish.
The dismemberments, Kyle, that's new to this game, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
I blew up some guy who was like about to chuck dynamite at me, and it blew his body like in half. And like you see like the little tendrils coming out of both sides of like, you know, the torsos, and I was like, that's new, you know.
I shot the guy's arm off, and then he kept coming after me with the other
arm. Yeah, I had an arm off guy. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's super cool.
Yeah.
The detail of like the Las Plagas stuff, like as you're progressing through the game and when you're taking them out, right, it's like they either fall to the ground or they start to kind of have a seizure, and they'll get back up in their heads like this, but then it goes further along, and then the fucking thing's coming out of their head, and like the detail in like that like Plagas like tentacle-y thing with the blade fucking coming out of their head is like it's really
the way
really
it whips at you is kind of
which is also
scary, but that is kind of intimidating, at least, if not scary. You know what I mean?
Because you have to evade, right?
Yes.
When you're finally fighting the village chief or whatever, you know, and he goes into his Plagas mode or whatever, it's just like, this looks so much better. Like it's so gross and thingy, like very John Carpenter-y, you know. It's very cool.
Yeah, the RE engine is like, I mean, so because I was looking it up because I thought for sure they did, and I can confirm. Devil May Cry 5, for example, used the RE engine. That game is gorgeous.
I didn't know that. Wow, Devil May Cry 5 is some of the best particle effects in any game I've ever played.
Just like the characters just look really like it, because it's such like a fantastical setting, right? But like the characters look like real, like their faces really good, like detail and everything.
I didn't realize that engine was so multi-versatile. That's super cool.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic, and I mean they're doing Dragon's Dogma too, so I'm hoping that's using that engine. That would be fantastic. Like it's a fantastic engine.
You know, it's interesting. It's not even over
when that game comes out.
Well, don't need to hear
climbing everything, right? Climbing things a boner.
Make sure you close your robe. But the interesting thing about that is the my computer, which is I've talked about before. It's kind of in that low mid range of specs, and it is not being overtaxed by this game. And I've got settings relatively cooking. Like it's
called optimizing.
Right. It's optimized well. And I also played it. I played it on my Steam Deck last night. So we were hanging out in the bedroom watching a couple shows, and I fired up the Steam Deck and I played about an hour and a half of this game. It was going to give the Steam Deck about 2.5 hours of battery life, which I was already surprised by. I was like, that's pretty good for a brand new AAA game. And the Steam Deck didn't get super hot. Like some games like God of War and a few others have really heated that thing up. Yeah. And you can hear the fan just like straining to keep up with it. And this wasn't doing that as much. And it looks and plays great. It fired up real fast. I was just like, man, this is an impressive example of like when you launch a game on all consoles, on PC, and it works on the Steam Deck as well. Like that's just impressive to me, even though it's not listed as verified yet. In my hour and a half with it, I'm like, this should be verified.
Did it feel like you were getting like at least 40 to 60 frames per second?
It was back down to like 30 because I'm getting like 80, 90 or so on my PC. It's kind of hovering in that range as I'm playing it, and it definitely wasn't as smooth as that. So I'd guess it's at 30.
Still good. I mean, I was just curious if it could get.
I did a couple combat sequences. I wanted to be like, all right, let me see how this thing really goes, and I'm not just walking around and talking to the trader. So I actually went and fought a bunch of enemies on the Steam Deck, and it held up great. It was
the merchant. The merchant is like more yappy now too.
Yeah,
he's very yappy, right? And I feel like he's in more places now too.
Yeah,
and I kind of always remembered him only have like opening his like cloak. Like, did they always have shops? Like,
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I just remember the really fat guy from RE8. That's the one I remember as I think back on these games. Like, oh yeah.
They're buddies. Remember, we got that reveal.
Yes, they are.
So I love that it works well on the Steam Deck. I also just I love there's like these light, I hesitate to call them RPG elements, but they are kind of, because you're managing an inventory and upgrades and a little more like Zelda. If you think of Zelda, like what little RPG elements are there, or at least immersive elements are in a Zelda game. Resident Evil games have always been like the Zelda series in a lot of ways that people don't recognize. I mean, you guys do, of course, but like people don't always recognize like, there's areas you can't get to that's a little Metroidy or Zelda-like until you have a certain item or a certain whatever, a certain key.
That is one of my favorite things about this series is that, you know, like you said, that Metroid type of element of like needing to you have to like go to a certain area to find a thing to then go back, and on the way back there's new stuff, like new enemies they're throwing at
You just like locked doors, that's all it is.
Yeah, I like locked doors, exactly. I love locked doors.
Well, like even the treasures, because a lot of times you'll solve these puzzles, you'll get these pieces together, you find them all, and you unlock it, and it's a treasure that you can sell. And this is one of those games that makes really good use of its currency. Like the currency really is what levels you up, essentially, because your gear needs to be stronger. And so getting those treasures and holding on to the gems, don't sell those till you can actually inlay them into a treasure, and it boosts up the value. Even more. So I love that
replay value is phenomenal, because like that's and this was like I think this was really like the first game that really like emphasized that and made that kind of gameplay loop more addictive, right? Is going back and doing kind of the new game plus and like carrying everything over.
Yeah, I mean, I remember people did it in 2 and 3 and Code Veronica a lot, but this game gave you a really big reason to do it.
Yes.
Whereas I think back then it was like more arcadey. It's like, how fast can I do it? How
this is like actual rewards for doing it, right? Like
this is like real rewards that actually carry over, which I think they may have in 2 and 3 as well. But like, it just seems everything's just bigger, and it was back then too when the game originally came out. The Mercenaries mode coming out here in a couple weeks,
for
like
free.
that's
for free.
I'm really digging the way the guns look and feel. I think the weapons are awesome. At the point that I'm at, I've really only had 2 boss fights and then several kind of like end of level encounters, like Kyle described with defending the house. There's a couple of encounters at the end of a chapter, but the 2 boss fights were a lot of fun. I kind of had forgotten about both of those, to be honest with you, and they're different. They're like, hey, let's mix things up for you a little bit. It's not the same as holding off a horde of, these poor Spanish people who are trying to attack you.
Poor Spaniards.
These Spanish people. But I think it's gorgeous. I think it's a blast to play, and I actually am finding kind of the story of it as it's coming back to me as I'm playing. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this piece and how this connects down. Okay, I remember this. Like, it's starting to kind of come back to me, because I haven't played it since I played it on the Wii, probably 15 years ago or whatever that was.
I haven't played in a good while fully. I think I started to replay it like a couple of years ago. But like then something else came. I think it was just like a moment where I was like, oh, I can play something, and I was just like, let me start this up. But it had been many years since I replayed the game, so.
But I'm enjoying it. Like I was like, oh yeah, I like the storyline. It's pretty good. Like it's interesting enough to keep driving you forward, and the characters are cool. And already, Baby Eagle is much less annoying than I remember from the original.
She's way less annoying. Yeah. And like you have less places to hide her and stuff like that. Like the AI, her AI is just better.
Yeah, you don't have to heal her now too, which is good.
Yeah, you can you pick her up after she gets down. It's pretty lenient, I would even say. It's they made a part of the game I hated like very good. Yeah, you can tell her to give me space.
Tell you give me space, and then usually she kind of stays out of harm's way for a little while at least. But sometimes they'll pick her up and start carrying her around. But
you got to get that trophy somehow. When they start picking her up and you shoot her.
I like in the beginning though, like, and this is why I'm really enjoying the remakes too, is like because like they're just kind of doing them, knocking them out one by one, and they're connecting them, and they're actually using like footage of like in the beginning there with Leon's story, how he's explaining everything that went down in Raccoon City.
That's right.
And it's actually showing imagery of that, and then like cutting to him like kind of doing the training that he was doing. Was
that imagery right out of the RE2 remake?
Yep.
Yeah. With Raccoon City and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Because a 4 used the original 2, which looked like, because I remember when they flashed back to it, I'm like,
like, oh,
that was like at least one console generation, right?
Yeah. Before a major 3D leap, so it's
right, yeah.
They're like, remember this? And everyone's like, ugh.
Yeah, God.
Somebody who's never played those, they're like, what the hell is this?
What is that? Yeah. So overall, of course, excellent game. This is kind of my main game, alongside with a couple other ones I'm wrapping up, but and I'll talk about those later. But really, really loving it. I think it's fair to say.